Hey guys, I'm super excited to have you here today, and I'll be showing you something very cool and unique in the Microsoft ecosystem. Before we dive in, as always, please hit the subscribe button. Also, turn on notifications so that when new videos come from my end, you'll be able to get the notification on things that I'm dishing out, which could make you work faster, make you work easier, and help you to achieve more. So once again, for today's section, we'll be walking through something unique and something powerful in the Microsoft ecosystem, and which is the power for you to be able to ingest data into Microsoft Dynamics through Dataflow. And it could also give you the opportunity to bring in data in an incremental fashion. So if you're a business in which your records columns changes, and you will not want to do all the work of creating workflows in CRM that take care of that, or using Power Automate as the case may be, and begin to have limitations. So imagine you're having records into millions as the fashion may be. So having workflows and also Power Automate flows that do those upsetting for you, trust me, it's going to be a pain. And sometimes those flows are going to turn off because of the limitations Microsoft has on Power Automate. But this is a very cool way I'm going to show you on how you could offset data when they come in. So when you have a new record, it's created. When it's an old record that something has changed, it updates the previous record. So stay right here with me. It might be quite an engaging one, but trust me, you're going to get a lot from this. So let's the fashion we're going to go with today is I'm going to walk you through what we are going to have, what the solution is about, and just some key notes. And as usual, we'll go through the slide and see what we have packaged for this session. So starting off, yeah, my content details are here. So in case you have any question you want help from any of your system based on what what I'm going to show you today, you could actually just reach out to me via email, or you can chat me up on LinkedIn, and I'll be able to get across to you quickly. So let's now check what we're going to cover here. So for this section, we'll be covering the business requirement scenario. As always, we'll bring something that shows what the business need. I know we are here to solve problems. We are here to offer solutions. So we must first of all see what is the business case, what does the business wants, and we now come to use what Microsoft solutions are available to be able to solve those business scenarios. So also going to have an overview of Dataflow to Microsoft Dynamics, Dataverse. We're going to now check what the upset concept is in Dataflow, and as usual, now I'm going to go give you the demo where we're going to have our hands dirty with what we have on the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. So straight up, without wasting much time, I'll go straight to the business requirements. So in this scenario, what we are looking forward to is, first off, this business want to expose their data in Dynamics CRM. So that's the end goal. But however, their data is coming from maybe an on-premise system, or from a different data storage end. And they want to first of all pass those data into Dataverse. And also when there's a change in any of those data from the sources coming from, they want Dynamics to also pick that update and update the record that was ingested previously into Dynamics CRM. So your record can come from different sources, but you are ingesting them into Microsoft Dataverse. However, due to the incremental fashion and the way things will be changing on those records, you will want the update that is experienced on the source system to also be experienced on Microsoft Dataverse. So that's what now brings us to, okay, what can we use to do that? And one solution we'll be looking at today is the Microsoft Dataflow. So what is the Microsoft Dataflow? So the Microsoft Dataflow is basically a solution from Microsoft that helps you put your data together, prepare them, then pass them into the Microsoft Dataverse or different data destination, so that the solutions that are built on those data platforms will then consume from it. For our scenario today, we'll be working more on the Microsoft Dataverse, which is where Microsoft Dynamics, which is the key place the business is looking at to it fits from. So the things that, as usual, fits from Dataverse are quite enormous and broad. That's why it's a good one for us to be able to know how to ingest this data, and for incremental fashion for business running case, how those data can be upset, that means updated if changes are made on the source system into the primary system. So the general concept of data offsets in Dataflow is, okay, so I have a record coming in. So what the offset does is it do a check. If the record already exists in Dataverse, I will not want to recreate it again, right? So what I want to do is I want to update the columns that are coming in now with what was there previously, so that if there's any change, the new changes will be what is being reflected on CRM. So the base of the architecture is just this. So a record is coming in. Does it exist in CRM? On that table, we're bringing it in. If yes, then pick the new columns information that came in for that record and update the ones that are already in CRM. And if no, the record doesn't exist in Dataverse previously, so what you're going to do is create a new one, which is just the architecture you're seeing on the screen now. So without wasting much time, based on that, we will now proceed down to our demo. So in the demo, I'm going to show you how to create data flows. I'm going to show you how records are loaded and the offsets. Then a bit of viewing those records in Dynamics CRM, how you could open them up. If you've not checked, you could check up my videos on creating entities in Microsoft Dynamics CRM to help give you more details into some of the things you might see me doing in the course of the video. So to kickstart, I just made a little ERD that we'll be using for the demo, not really in the ERD form for those of us that know database, but I just had to cook up something for the PowerPoint slide. So the tables we'll be working with to do this test run is a sales table. So I have that in an Excel file. So you can bring in data from different sources using Dataflow. So you can bring from Excel, which is your raw file. You could bring from Synapse. You could bring from your on-prem system, pass them through Azure Data Lake, then from Data Lake, pass them down to Dataverse. So Microsoft have this powerful architecture flow for data into your Dynamics CRM. Okay, so the three tables we'll be using to demo all the whole scenario I've painted up in regards to the business case is the first is the sales table. And on that sales table, we'll be having the sales ID as a primary key. We have the customer table, and the customer ID will be serving as a primary key, while the join on the sales table and the customer table will be on the sales ID. So the next table will be the items which the customer bought, and on that table we have the item ID as the primary key, while the customer ID will be used to join both the customer table and the item table. So quickly, let's get our hands dirty. So now we'll navigate to where everything works, and that is on the Microsoft platform solution. I sure love this. Okay, so let's go down. So just go to my browser. So the first thing I'll do is to go to make.powerapps.com and click on enter. Okay, so now I'm in make.powerapps.com. So the first thing you just need to confirm is that you're in your right environment. So for this case, I have some other environments here, but I'm going to stick with using these. Then the first thing is all the operations we're trying to do all the checks and tests. I want to build them in a solution. So how do I go about building a solution? So you just go to the your left panel here, click on solutions. Then at the top, you see new solution. So I'll click on new solution. So I will just call these let's call data upsert Yeah, data upset is fine. Then the publisher, let's create a new publisher. So let me just call this um, D DUP. Okay, let's say data offsets pub, something like this. So if you check my video, or possibly you could use the publisher already on the system. So there are some publishers already here. Okay, just to save us time, let me just use this default publisher and I'll hit on create. All right, so we now have our solution created, right? And solution always comes blank without anything sitting in it. So what we'll now do now is the tables we want. So let me just go down here and give you a view to the table. So these are the tables we'll be using. So we have the customer table one, we have the item listing, which holds the item. I'll have the sales. So let me just open this so we could see what we have for the table. So when you click on, so I've clicked on it here. So basically what we just have is the customer ID, the full name, location, phone number, and the sales rep ID. This sales rep ID is what we'll be using to do a lookup from the customer table into the sales table so as to tie which salesperson is tied to this customer. So we'll see that just in a bit. Then when we get back to our sales table, we just open this also. You can see that on our sales table, it's coming up. We have records like the sales rep ID, which will be our key. We have the name, we have the office code, right? And the last table we'll be working with is the item listing, which lists all the item that belongs to a specific customer. So we can see the item ID, customer ID. This customer ID will now be the lookup that will be tying this customer ID record with the customer that needs to own this. And we have the name of the item, the SKU, then also the delivery price. So these are just random stuffs. You could request this data if you want to test this out. You could just chat me via mail and I'll send them directly to you. A member from my team will be able to reach out to you. Okay, so let's proceed on that. Then, so the first thing we need to do is we need to create those tables in Dataverse. So to do that, you click on tables here. Then you proceed to the new button at the top on this ribbon here. Just click on new. Then you go to tables and click on table. So with this now, you give your table its name. So I'll call this customer. Customer table. Something like this should be fine. Then we could click on save. Okay, now let's just call this customer tables, something like this. Let's say, let me call this table customer record, something like this. So let me call this table customer record, click on save. Then the next I'll create so after creating the table, the next thing is to create these columns. You can see here, each of these columns, I need to create them except this one, which will be a lookup. So I'll create a customer ID, which is a string, you can see it's character. I'll create the full name, which is actually a string. Location is a string. Then phone number, we could just make it integer. Then we could leave this out and it will be created when we're doing the relationship. So I'll go down here, I'll go to columns. I'll click on new column. I'll call this customer ID, right? Then I'll leave it as string, click on save. Then the next we have is the full name. So I'll go down here and click on new and call this full name, and click on save. The next we have is the location. So I'll click on this, new again, call this location, click and save. Then the next we have is your phone number. So for the phone number, just click on this. I'll call this phone number, and the data type, I'll be selecting number and whole numbers just for saving sakes. Yeah, just click on save. Then the last one is the sales rep ID, which is actually a lookup, so we can create that now until we create the sales rep table. So I'll click on new, apologies, click on tables, then I'll click on new, go to tables, I'll click on table. So now we call this sales rep table, something like this. So I click on save. So this is the sales rep table. And what do we have for the sales rep? We have the sales rep ID, the person's name and its office code. We have integer here, we have string here, we have string here. So you just go down and go to sales rep, go to columns, click on new column, call this sales rep ID, and this is actually an integer whole number. I'll click and save. Okay, so when I'm done with that, the next is the full name of the sales rep. So I just call this full name. I'll leave that as a string, which is single line text, and I'll click on save. Then the next will be I think the office code. The office code also is a string. Come down here, you could see that the office code is a string. So I'll just go down here. I'll click on new. I'll click on the office code, and I'll leave this as a string, and I click on save. So now we're done creating the sales table. Then the last table we need to create is the item listing. So I'll just click on tables and click on new and go down to tables as usual. I'll just call this item listing, which is the list of items belonging to one of the customers. So I'll click on save. Once that is done, then we go down to our item listing, and the columns we have is item ID, which is a string, item name, SKU, and delivery price. This is actually going to be a lookup. So we'll create the lookup when we start creating the relationships, right? So I'll come to item listing, go here, let's check what we have. We have the item ID. So I'll come here, say new. I'll call this item ID. And the item ID is actually a string, right? Yeah, it's a string. So come here and click save. The next is the item name and the SKU, which is number. Click on new, call this item name, right? And it's a string. Click on this. So we're just trying to make the foundations ready for the data we want to receive. And then next we click on this, we call this SKU, and this is actually a whole number. Click on this. Then when we're done with the SKU, then the last one I think is the delivery price, which is actually a decimal. Right, let's just confirm that. What do we have for delivery price? Delivery price actually a decimal. So we go back here and say delivery price, and come down here and we go to numbers and we say decimal and we click on save, right? So we're not done creating all our tables that we need, that we're bringing in records from, and creating all the columns using the data types or the kind of data that was in those columns. And the next thing now is for us to create the relationships on how the data is going to link to these three records. So we know that from the customer record, many customers here we have one sales rep, right? While one customer will have many items tied to them. So that's the linking we're going to do now. So we'll come down to the customer table, go to relationships. So now I want to create a relationship between customer and sales rep. So many customers will have one single sales rep. So I come down to new relationship, and now it's many customers to one sales rep. So I click on many to one. So many to one, and in this case, the table we're looking at is a sales rep table. Sales rep table. Click on this. So this is a sales rep table, and so it's going to be sitting on the customer record because we'll be having many customers that will be tied to just one sales rep. So this is how we're going to leave it and say done. So with this now, we've established this column, this one, the sales rep ID column. Then the next now is for us to establish a relationship between table customer records and the item listing. So we expect that one customer will have multiple items, right? So since one customer will have multiple items, so in that scenario, our relationship now will be one customer to many items will be one to many, right? So I click on one to many, and in this case, what I'll be looking out for here is item listing, and I click on this. So now I'll just leave everything as default, even the table name and all that. We will change that when we are using them on the form. So I then click on done. So with this now, I'm done establishing the relationship from the ERD to the tables, right? So the tables are now linked in CRM, and once the record begins to come, you can now tie the record from the source using Dataflow based on this relationship when they're coming in. But before you could be able to identify which record it should use from the related table to tie to that record based on what we have, we now need to establish a primary key, right? A primary key is going to help us identify the specific record in that table, and we will provide that based on the table coming in and identify a column in that table which is unique. So for the customer record, the unique column for us is the customer ID. So we just go down to key and create new key, and in this case, what we're calling our key is customer ID, right? And I'll click on the column that I expect to be, that I want to use as the key. In this case, we're using the customer ID. We're going to click on customer ID and click save. Then we're going to allow that to run because the status needs to change to active. Then that's when we know it's done. So for sales, the column we expect to be the key will be the sales rep ID, right? So I'll click on new key and come here and say sales rep ID. Then, and the column that states that is this. I just click on this and click on save. Also, for the last table, which is item listing, we expect that the item ID should be unique across all items, right? So I'll click on new and I'll click on item ID. So all these stuffs will stuffs from the table, from the source of the data, right? These things are already established. So we are trying to rebuild that architecture here so that when the data comes, we can unload them on this architecture we already have. So I'll click on ID and click on save. So with this now, we now have an architecture, right, that can hold our data, and from Dataflow, we could do all the linkings and the lookup. Because normally in CRM, when you need to pass related records, we use the lookup. So lookups primarily use the guild ID of that item, right, and tie it to the item is related to. But in this case now, we're now using the power of the primary key, which we are setting ourselves. So with this primary key, you could pass directly through Dataflow, and it will link it up at the point of entry. So with that, you're rest assured that your records are sitting correctly as they're supposed to be in CRM without any record being missed in terms of how they're linking. Um, if you want to use scripts or other options to do the linking in CRM for you, yeah, it's going to work. But the problem is when you start having large volume of records. Let's say your organization uses, you have records over in millions, so you begin to have capacity issues because you'll be so let's say you're using this architecture of you load the data first, look for the old one, use the new one to update it and all that using a script, then delete the new one that came in. With that, you'll be running into capacity issues. But with this, we're not doing any of the activity in Dataverse per se. We're doing each of these operation of linking them right from the source of the data. So we are now passing in the data and we are passing in the primary key value for the record in the related table we want to link with. So that's seriously a game changer for those that will be dealing with very high volume of records. Trust me, it's something I've worked over, and I could tell you that Dataflow is really a lifesaver, a lifesaver. All right, so we now have this ready. So then let's just put a tweak to our forms. You could check my videos on how to create entity and forms, so that we just have a nice view right on what we are doing, because we want to see this data sitting in Microsoft Dynamics CRM. So we just go to one of the modules and just put those tables there and be able to see them. So let me just go to the customer table and go to forms. So on this, we'll just edit the main form. Okay, so now we're editing the main form. So we just take out some things and just bring in some of the records, some of the columns we created, so that I just have some nice look. Not necessarily something fancy, but if you check my previous video on entity creation, you could see more details on how to go about here. So I'll just hide these and hide these because it can be deleted. Then I'll just bring in the full name of the customer, right? Then what's the customer's location? I could also want to see the customer ID. Then I could bring in the customer's phone number, and also who is the salesperson tied to this customer. And I think with this we're fine. But we have the salesperson here now, but we need the listing, right? The listing of all the items that belongs to this specific customer. So I'll just go down to components. Another component, I'll go to subgrid, and in subgrid now, what I'm going to pick is I want to show related records. So I click on show related records, and the table I want to pick out is the item listing table, this one. And when I click on this, and the view I will want to use is still this default item listing view, and I click on done. So with that, I will now have a grid down here that will list all the items that belongs to this specific customer. So I'll just come and change this label and call this item listing like this. Also, I want to have some additional information on this grid. So just the name and created on isn't fine for me. So let me just save this and publish. Then we'll go back to your item listing table and then update this view. So if you check my previous video also, you could get more information on what views and how the work goes in terms of provisioning dynamic CRM. So this is published, so just go back. Then I'll go down to item listing, go down here, go down to views. Then this is a view that came up, which is the default public view. So I'll click on this. Then I'll just add some few columns to make it more okay with further information. So I could decide to add the item name, right? I could add the delivery price. We could leave out SKU and other things. I think these two should be fine. Then we just click on, or we could remove. You could still put this like this anyhow you want them. Then let's say item ID. Let's say you also want the item ID, and you just save and publish this. So when you save and publish this, right? If you go back to the customer table where we're just working on, and you go down to your main information. If you look at your form now, you now see that the new columns you added to that grid view that is being used here will now be reflecting. So that's just to confirm. So as you can see now, on our form has loaded, and we now have the additional columns we brought in. So we brought in item ID, delivery price, item name, and created on as well before previously. All right, so that's fine. So the last thing we just need to do now is we'll go to item listing two and just have some things on our form for it. So go here so that when you click on the item listing from the customer end, you can see more information about that item. So I will just drag on the delivery price, the item name, and created on and some other fun stuff. So I'll just do do item name, SKU, something like this. Take this one down. What again can we bring in? Now which customer owns this record? So that's for the customer. So I just call this and come here and say this is actually customer, right? Then we could come also and check the created on, check the delivery price. And I think it's fair enough and fine. So I could just click on save and publish. So when we're done saving and publishing, we could also do the same for our sales rep. Just bring up some key information about the sales rep. So I'll go back here, come down to the sales rep, go to the forms, and also come to the main form. And also just do some fun stuff, bring the full name, bring some other columns. So I'll just have additional display. So both the sales rep, right, and the item listing, so we could access them from just the customer table. So let me just drag these additional information here: office code, sales rep ID, and created on, and all those things. So with that, I think it's okay. So I could just save and publish. So as I stated earlier on, if you want more details on what I'm doing in regards to the forms, right, you could check my previous videos on forms, or the one I talked about creating entities in Dynamics CRM. It's going to give you a bigger insights into what we're doing here. Then I go back. So let me just go back to and confirm the customer form we're using and see if everything sits well and fine. So I just want to rename the sales rep lookup. So I read sales rep. Yeah, this is taking quite some time. Yeah, so the display for sales rep, we won't want it to be reading sales rep table. So we just change the display name and call this sales rep. Remove the table and just click on save and publish. Now we're save and publish. So now we're done with all the foundational work, right? Now we now want to load our data into CRM, into Dataverse, so that from Dataverse CRM feeds off from it. So what we're going to do now is create the data flow, right? The icing on the cake, the joy giver, if I may say, right? The guy that's going to help us move in our data, and from the point of moving them in, it's going to do all the linkings from rows. There's going to be need for workflows or whatever of the sorts to do the linking for you on runtime or using Power Automate, which will begin to break if you have large volume of records and all that. So we're going to now use Dataflow to do that. So to do that, we go back to our solution. Just go back here. So now we're in our environment, right? So to create Dataflow, on the left panel here, you go to more, click on more, then scroll down to Dataflow. So you click on Dataflow, right? Perfect. So now the first thing we're now going to do is we are going to load the sales table, since this sales rep will be fed into the customer table. So we'll load the dependent table first before the core table, which fits from all these other ones. So we're going to load the sales table first, the sales rep, and also the custom. We'll load the sales just as we have it on our slide here. We'll load the sales. After loading the sales, we then load the customer table. After loading the customer table, then we can now load the item table, because this is mapped from this and this is mapped from this. So let's just go down here. So go back to environment, create new data flow, start it from blank here. So you now say sales rep table inflow, something like that. You can give it whatever name you want, then you click on create. So now Dataverse, as I said earlier on, Dataflow gives you, a large pool of sources you could bring in data from, right? They are quite enormous, So you could see a list of them here. You could bring from your SQL Server, database, SharePoint, text file, Azure SQL database, Web API. So it's a powerful access for you to be able to drive data from different sources into different sources in this Microsoft Dataverse ecosystem. So what we're now going to do now is we want to bring in records. So I just have those tables already on Excel. So in your own case, it might be from your on-premise SQL servers. It could be from your Azure Data Lake. So if for instance you're using your on-premise servers, right? So you could feed your data. You want to feed them in an incremental fashion, right? So you could feed them to your Azure Data Lake, right? And have a first staging. Then you now have a second staging that does the incremental. So whatever changes on your first staging for the day is what you move to the incremental. Then your incremental fits into Dataverse. So that's a cool approach you could use. But for us, for this training, we're sticking to the data we already have on our Excel file. So I'll just go to browse here, and I want to bring in the sales record. So I'll just go to the sales rep record here, click on sales rep, click on open, and it's going to now ask me to sign in. When you sign in, it's now going to pick in your credentials. So as you can see, let's pick mine here. So I'll click on next. Yeah, so now we have on next. Now I'll now select the table I want to use. So when I select on this table, it brings me the record. I can now say transform data. So this transform data place is where you can now use things like Power Query to do a lot of powerful things on your data if you want to, or you could just ingest your data the way you're bringing from your system. In our case, we're just ingesting directly. We're not making any change or anything to the data. So I'll just click on next. So the next now is the mapping. So those columns we are creating in Dataverse, now we need to tell Dataverse through Dataflow that for this column, pass its own value to this column in this table in CRM. For this one, pass it to this. For this one, pass it to this. So in our case, we'll be using load to existing table. Then when you now click here, the table we're looking out for is the sales rep table. So the publisher is create6 underscore. Then what you now be looking for is the sales rep table, which is this, right? So I'll click on sales rep table. Now it now loads the mapping interface for me. So the first thing is I'll select my key. My key is the sales rep ID. Then now this is the destination. So from my source, for full name, I want to pick full name. I want to pick the name. For the name, this is like the primary default field, right, for that entity when we created it. So I could also still use the name. Then for the office code, we know what it is, the office code. Why for the sales rep ID is the sales rep ID we have. Then hula, you're done, right? So next you click on next. Then the next interface now tells you, okay, do you want this in an incremental fashion? So for those that will be bringing data real time, right? So you now need to have an automatic refresh. So like I explained earlier on, your second staging now, that's what will be holding your incremental. So if a new record hits your first bucket, you should now pass for the day. You could just set like a timer that filter out those new ones based on a timestamp column and then takes them to your incremental table. Then that incremental table is where you could not set your automatic refresh, such that every day at a given time it picks up those new records. For our case, we'll leave everything as manual. There will be no need for incremental refresh. So, but let me just show you. So for incremental refresh or for automatic refresh, as the case may be, you could specify how frequent you want the refresh to pick. So what the refresh does is it reruns the data flow and picks the data that is on its cache and take it in from the source you've given it, maybe be it Azure Data Lake or whatever. So it reruns it. If there's a connection to an Azure Data Lake package file, from that package file, it picks whatever you've ingested into it over time and reruns that on the whole system. So, and also why I advise to have a staging and an incremental is that if you have quite large amount of volume of records and you do your first ingestion, maybe during your project development stage, during the concurrent running of the system, it will be good to always do a full reinjection of all data when some are not actually being changed and all that. So picking the ones that have changed so as to not overwork the system will actually be of good use to you. So you could remove time lag and all that, because the higher the volume of record, the more time you need to take for that operations to get through into Dataverse, as the case may be. So I'll just go back to manual, just leave everything the same way, then I'll publish. So publishing, just you could now see, you'll see your flow running here after it's been published. So we'll just give it some minutes, as the case may be, and this is going to run, then we'll now investigate what happened. All right, great. So our data flow for the sales rep table is done, and you can see the published was successful. Everything is green. I love seeing green on data flow. So on our last refresh, which is the last one I just did, it's also green. Trust me, you always want to see green when it's going. But we could investigate in detail and see what actually happened. So we can go to show refresh history, and I'll click on the refresh and see. So as you can see right here, right, we have rows created is 5, rows updated is 0, failed rows 0, and there's no error message. So hula, all is good, huh? So the next, now we're going to ingest our customer table. So we said customer record inflow, right? Inflow. Yep. So I'll click on create, as we did for. So we're picking also the customer table 1. So with the customer table 2, we'll see some changes that were made to customer table 1 and how the system now interprets them as Upsert, as the case may be. So I'll go here and click open. Then it's going to load it and also pick up my credentials since I've signed in already. Then when it's done, as we did the previous time, click on next. Then click on your table. Yeah, so we can see our record now that we are trying to bring in. So I'll click on transform data. So there's nothing much we're going to be doing here, as we want to use our data directly. So I'll click on next. Now I'm not going to do the mapping, right? I'll be mapping our source data columns into the destination, which is Dataverse. So I'll load existing, and this time I want to use the table customer record. So click on this. So first of all, your key is your customer ID. Then your customer ID, you map it to customer ID. Your full name, you map it to full name. Your location, map it to location. Your name, still map it to full name. Then your phone number, you map it to your phone number. Here is now where the linking is being done for us. So you can see this is actually our lookup. And this lookup now, what we are passing in is the primary key value, which is the primary which is the sales rep ID. So with this, it knows which record is going to link up for us. So I'll click on next, and after clicking on next, all good, and we're going to publish. So that's the publishing for that one. So we're going to allow it to run also, then we investigate what happened. Okay, hula. So also our customer record inflow, it's fine. Yeah, everything green as usual, which is what we love. That's on a lighter note. So let's investigate what came in just in terms of seeing how many were created or as the case may be. So if you come here, you can see that 8 records were created and everything fine. So the next thing we're going to bring in now is now our item listing table record, item listing. Then I'm going to click on create. So now browse this and bring in item listing, click on open, then allow it to load. When it's done loading, I'll click on next. I'll select this one, which is what I want to use. This is the item listing, and we have the customer ID, which will be what will be tying to the lookup. Click on transfer. You don't do anything here, so just click on next. So here we're going to load to existing table, which is our item listing table. So click on load to existing, come here and look for our publisher code and look for the item listing, this one. Yeah, so click on this. Now we'll now set our mapping. For this one, the primary key is item ID. So delivery price is going to go to delivery price. Item ID, we go to item ID. Item name, we go to item name. The name, we could still use item name. Then the SKU, we go to SKU. Now this is done to look up to your customer. So you now pass in the customer ID, which is the key on the customer table. So I'll click on next and click on publish. And fantastic, we are done with creating our data flow. So now we now have to go back to Dynamics and see how the record we've ingested looks like, right? So to be able to see what we've done, so let me just go to the environment we're actually working on. Right, click on this. So in the environment, I will want this customer service hub. So I'll just bring in the entity here so that from here we could access it. So I'll just go to this and go to customer service hub, go to open app designer. So from the app designer, I'm going to add the entity, which is a customer table entity. So that from there we could just navigate and see records that we have. So I want to put it under the customer section, go down here, customer. Then click on this three ellipses here. Then I'll go down to new page. Now I want to bring in something from Dataverse table. So it's telling me to choose the contents for the page, which is a Dataverse table. So I'll click on next. Then now the table I'm looking out for is the table customer record, this one. And I'll click on add. I could also change the name. So I could call this I could just, okay, it's trying to take time. Okay. So this is the table we brought in. I could just save and publish, save this. After saving, I could also proceed to hit the published icon. Okay, great. Now we're done publishing the new table we brought into this navigation customer service hub. So just go back to customer service hub, and when you refresh, you should see your new table sitting here, right? So now when we click on this, it brings you the default view for that table. Yeah, and voila, you can see all the records we brought in through Dataflow. Our Dataflow guy has really done a good job for us. So now the next thing, let's just review what we brought in. So if I click on, let's say, Andrew Call, so I could see his name, the form we're trying to put together, right? The has been populated now. Then from here also I could see the sales rep that is tied to this person, and I could also click on this sales rep, and it takes me to the sales rep form where I could see more details on this sales rep. So that's actually what the linking does. So it has linked the sales rep record that belongs to Andrew. Also, we now have the listing of all the items that belongs to Andrew, and from here I could also click on it, and it takes me to the full form that shows me the details of that item. From here also I could click and it takes me back to Andrew, right? So that's how powerful the linking in CRM works, and which is what we did at the point of bringing in the records using Dataflow. So quickly we'll now walk through what the update looks like. So let's investigate what our second customer table looks like. So what changed in our second customer table is actually, so for Andrew, right, for ID with AEC9388, sorry, this one, his full name changed to Andrew Capt. So let's go back here and look for that record. So let me go back here and look for, let me see, Andrew Cole, right? Okay, this is AE, let's see, what's this? AEC988, Andrew Capt. So his surname changed from Colio to Capt, right? So we now want to see how that will play. So other things that changed are, if you can see for this record, this changed. So this record also, this changed. For this record, that's why I highlighted them in yellow. This will change when we re-ingest this record. For this one, this will change. For this one, this will change. For these two, they're actually new records. So at the end of we re-ingesting this record, what Dataflow should tell us is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 5 updates that were done and 2 creation that was done. So let's run this now and see how it looks. So let's go back to our Dataflow. Now go to your customer record, click on this, click on edit. Now go to get data, Excel workbook. Now upload file, browse this, and let's pick customer table 2 and click on open. So when this is done uploading, it's then going to link the connection. So click on next. So we are connecting to our data source. Yeah, we're done connecting. So click on the table we want to use, this one, and voila, we create. Good. So now this was the previous one we're using. This is the current one we have now. So I'll just pick everything the same way it is and click on next. So now we don't want table 1 again because we want to check our upsets working with table 2 where record changed. So I could just come here and click on reset this, right? Then say do not load. So you shouldn't load this table 1. Then go to table 2, load to existing, and come down here and check for your table customer, which is this one, and I'll set my key to this. So as usual, what we did before, we'll do that here. Full name is full name, location is location, name is full name, phone number is phone number, and the lookup that will tie is the sales rep ID, and I'll click on publish. Right? Yes. So it's going to show it's going to publish it, then refresh and run with the new data we gave it. So let's just give it some time. So you can see it's publishing, and let's give it some time and see when it's done. Okay, so the second set we've pushed in is now done. So let's go back to our table and see. So if I refresh this now, what's now Andrew's name? You can see the Andrew's name has changed to Capt, right? So, and it's not creating any new record. If you go back here, 400. When you go back to customer profile, you could see the new ones that came in, created on, let me see if I could use the time. You could see this one. This was a new one, and this was a new one. The old ones are still there, but they are just updated for the ones that came back with a different record. So if you see this and this are actually the new one. So that's basically the powerful way you could use. So where you appreciate this more is when you're dealing with large volume of records for your organization. I need to move them to Dataverse, which this is like dynamic CRM, your Power BI, your Powerhouse, begin to feed from. So this is a powerful way you could bring in large volume of records. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for staying tuned to the end. So as I said earlier on, hit the subscribe button, also turn off the notification bell so that the amazing videos I'm going to be sharing to help you work easy, work smart, and achieve more through that the Microsoft ecosystem. You get notifications on that. Also, you could drop me on your comments what other things you want me to give you hints on. Also, if you need assistance with implementing this for your organization at any point in time, you could reach out to me via email and we could discuss how that could be done. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you for stopping by. See you in our next video. Thank you.